This deer head is for like the deer picks. So this will basically be upon a stick, a branch, something like that. So trace this out onto your freezer paper. Bear this in mind. You'll be tracing out the deer head since this is an overlapping pattern. Then you'll do the ears, the antlers, the nose, so on and so forth. And then that way you have all your pieces on freezer paper. You'll be able to cut them out and, of course, iron them to fabric and reuse them over and over again. So this will be really nice. One thing to bear in mind on this particular pattern, you'll want to come down a little further, I would think. That's what I plan on doing, is make the neck a little longer so that when it goes onto the branch or stick or dowel that you use for the pick, you'll have some extra length in the neck and it won't cut off so short. And just kind of bear that in mind. These little dashes you see here are basically where you can gather it up and close it up if you double this up, or if you just cut singles, say using felt. And even with the ears here, you could do a single if you want to. You don't have to double the fabric. It's simply up to you. And then, of course, the nose. You can do all this in fabric. You can do parts and pieces in felt. And really, truly just make it your own. So we will now have a deer pick. Now, I'll put this link to the pattern. All of these are on my Pinterest. So what I may begin doing, since it's just the pattern, is just linking you to the Pinterest, and then you can just download the image from there and print it to any size you like. The deer head is stuffed and filled. This will be closed up, so I'll put a basting stitch around this so I can pull it taut around the stick. But before I do that, I want to attach the ears. So you'll take and you'll cut 2 pieces of fabric, and what that does is it gives it a little more firm stay, almost works like a stabilizer. You can do these with single, with using felt or something a little more stiffer. So what you'll do is you'll take the ear and you'll fold it, just, like fold it and meet the corners. But then right here, take 1/4 of an inch and fold that back, and see how it makes like a leaf shape for the deer ears. And on one side of that pattern, you have a more shorted angle. You have an angle and it rounds. That's actually the lower part of the ear, and this is the upper part that stands up real good and high and straight. You don't have to remember that. It's not a big deal when you put your deer together. But at this point, I just want to press these and get them real smooth. And then I can take and I will fold that, push back 1/4 of an inch on both sides, and then I'm just going to run a stitch through that so that it stays in place. So I'm just taking my little easy press and pressing them just to make sure that everything is pushed out. I put a basting stitch down here to close off the raw edge, just tucked under 1/8 of an inch, and run a basting stitch. I'm not worried about the black thread. It doesn't bother me at all. As a matter of fact, whenever this gets done and put in, you're not even going to see that thread at all. So don't sweat it too much. I actually stitched it together with black thread. Now, when you sew your deer together, you'll fill it with polyfill or stuff it, and then you'll double your ears, gather them up, and then just attach them to this lower backside before the curve begins. So right at the back, and then it'll start curving down. Your antlers will go here, and your nose, of course. But at this point, I need to color my fabric. So I'm actually going to do the paint method. I'm going to mix up some of my colors. I have hazelnut of the chalk paint. This is nutmeg. This is actually an antique and medium. And then I have a little bit of parchment. So I'm just going to make me a mixture until I'm content with the color. And then I'm going to apply that with my chippy brush. So I've used 1 part of the nutmeg, 2 parts of the hazelnut, a 1/2 part of this parchment, and now I'm going to take my coffee grunge for my water part and just add it. If I need to, I can actually put more water, and there will be about 4 parts of this coffee grunge I may need more because I am doing 4 deer heads, and I need to make enough to do them all. It shouldn't take a whole lot, and it's just going to look like a really yucky looking sludge that will make this beautiful color painted on my fabric, and it will stain it and paint it. That'll give it some stiffness too. Too bad. I think it'll look good, and I'm not going to test it. I'm just going to wing it and see how it goes. So it's wet right now. I'll set it to dry, and that color will calm down a whole lot once it dries. So I think it's going to turn out to be beautiful color, and if not, I can always paint a different color over it. So this is going to work more or less as a paint stain, and thus far that's looking pretty good. Finishing up the reindeer, it's stained, it's looking great. Now I cut my branches around 14 inches. That allows at least 1.5 to 2 inches inside that will be glued in, and then I'll tighten up these strings around it too. So for your reindeer head poke, I call them picks, you're going to put your antlers in front here. Then the eyes are going to be right about here. We're going to paint those eyes on. Now when I do the nose, depending on the size of the reindeer, you're going to kind of round it off at the bottom. So you don't have to make it this wide if you don't want to. If it doesn't look right, then of course you can cut it down. But just to give you a general idea, like all these little scrap pieces I end up with, I save all that because there's no need for me to waste a whole nother sheet of felt in order to get that little bit that I'm going to need. And these little tiny pieces, believe it or not, a lot of times pay off when you're doing like snowmen or any kind of small thing. And so that will get me my little nose for my reindeer. And remember when I told you about leaning your scissors sideways in order to make your squares more rounded, and you just lean it sideways and you won't have trouble with angles and sharps looking on your felt. It'll kind of almost like it shaves it, but cutting it sideways keeps the pile from shifting on you when you're cutting it. So now we have our snout. Now the way I map things out in my mind, guys, is the antlers, they're tall, they're pokey, they're gonna kind of be in your way. So it's better to put all your small parts, like doing the nose and stitching the mouth and getting the eyes before you start putting the antlers and the stick in the bottom. That way you can move him around and, do what you need to do. So just a FYI, in kind of working towards the finished product, is to anything that you can keep out of your way, of course, keep it out of your way and do the small things first. As you know, a Sharpie is your best friend, and if nothing else, use a pencil or an ink pen and kind of map out where the antlers are going to be. I'm going to put them right here, very up top and in front of the ears, atop of the head. I've seen people put them behind, in front. I don't really know how they, might be thinking, but I'm going to put them right here atop of his head, and I've just put me a mark so I know where they're at, and then that way I can map out the eyes. Now the easiest way to map out the eyes, you have your ears. Eyes are going to be pretty much on this particular one in line with those ears, and halfway between the ears and the snout, 3/4 of the snout and then back. That way you have an idea. Now they're going to be kind of down the side here. So if you wanted to kind of put you a mark there so you know where the eyes are, and then that way you can look and see if they're lined up with each other. That way when you go to put the eyes on, which that looks cute right there. If you just wanted something that, innocent, that's a sweet little eye. It's little and it's quaint, so it just depends on what it is. And one of these could have dropped down lower than the other, but it's just the way it worked out. It'll be fine. The stitching for the mouth, once that little snout is put on, and if you say your snout's here, you don't have to put any stitching for the mouth if you don't want to. And you can just kind of color the fabric and just put a little thing right there, really small. And that way you can put you can leave the marker, or you can put actual stitching, whichever's easiest for you. If you don't want to fool with the stitching, just put a mark with a magic marker. It'll stay. It's not going to go anywhere. And like I said, you can do the same for the eyes. You don't have to paint them on. You can just put a little mark and be done with it. Whichever you like and what's easiest for you. Now once you have your little nose glued on, and I used tacky glue, drew my little line with just a little tiny mouth. Don't go crazy. Got my eyes mapped out, and I have my antlers mapped out. We will also do some dry brushing on these ears with some white paint, and that'll give them life. And they look great like this, but they look even better with a little bit of white in there. I want you to think of a teardrop or a pumpkin seed, watermelon seed. And even though I've got that dot here, I feel like these need to come down more. So I'm going to actually draw them down further and use that mark as my guide to the upper edge. See how I just made a little teardrop? Use a pencil, because on this stiffened fabric that we've painted it up and put our grunge in there, you can erase it. So see how I made this one more back here, and it doesn't look right. So I'm just going to erase it. And see, that just adds to the prim of it. And you can take that off real gently. So see, I'm using that as my guide. And a lot of times I do better if I am turning it where it's facing me. So see how I used that as my guide and then made my teardrop. So same here. This one I'm going to have to turn a little bit. And I'm going to come down with my teardrop and then come up. When you're using a pencil, see, it's very forgiving. You can erase it. And so this one is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to have to make this one a little bigger. Let's see if I've got those about right now. Got my line up too high. Not a problem. So I probably need to sharpen my pencil. That would help. So here's my forward point. About in line with each other. And shy of God's perfection, we can just do the best we can. How's that? And remember, if you'd rather purchase than to make, dandysoap.com/shop. And the link will be in the description box down below. So I have that mapped out. Now, here's the thing with the eyes. All of this up here is going to be black. And this back here will be white. So by penciling it in, you have a guide to go by, and you can paint those in, or you can use a marker. The paint markers give you a lot of control over this. And if you don't, then just use a paintbrush, or you can just leave that mark and be done with it. Since these are being sold, I've got to make them very professional looking and do it right. And make sure that your marker's good and flooded. Now, the first thing you want to do is the entire area in the white. Do the whole eye. Just go ahead and color in, because it's going to soak up pretty fast in this fabric, even though fabric's stained and stiff. Then I always turn mine around like this so I can see better. And this is called coloring inside the lines, guys. Just like in school. And make sure that you stay inside your lines. Don't go out of it. because I don't know how well we can fix it if we go outside the lines. Alright, so I'll go ahead and I'll do the rest of mine the same way. Now with the white done, in the very front at the teardrop area of the point, almost 3/4 of the eye in black. See how I made that round? And come forward and just fill that in. That eye is done. Same thing over here. You're just going to make that round. And you can do it shy if you feel like you'll miss the mark. And you're rounding it in the back and filling in the front area. And that's it. You got your eyes made. And you could put a little dot of white in there after that dries, but make sure it's good and dry. To finish up the reindeer, as you can see, I've done a few dots on the black for the eyes. Nose is in place. I'm leaving the magic marker versus doing some thread. And we have our antlers in place. And I punch a hole, place them in there, put a little glue, and then just let that dry and harden. So next is the reins, and I've selected these red bells. You can get these. You could do a rusty bell, but I thought that looked pretty cute. And I have this variegated jute twine that I think will be great. And this is a super easy one to do as far as putting this around it. So I'm going to make sure that I allow enough, because we're going to come across the snout. You don't have to have too much extra. We're going to come across the snout. We're going to crisscross it underneath the neck. And we do need to get that bell on there. And then it's going to come up around the back and tie right here in the back. And that's really all you need. So I'm going to put the bell on there. Make sure that my reins are about the same length. And that should be sufficient for all of them, so I could do the same on all the deer. And you could glue the bell, but I think it'd be easier to make sure it stays in place to put it on the string. Just a matter of making sure they get set right. And I can slide this up. I'm going to put the cross in front of that bell. So when I crisscross it and tie it, just give it a single tie, and they'll keep that bell right there centered. And that's it. Put this in the back. A little tie here. And just leave the reins loose. I don't think it needs anything more. Don't want to do it tight because you don't want to press that. You want it to stay. And the best way to do that is make sure when you tie it, you pull in opposite direction. That will keep your reins coming down and out of the way. And if you need to, you can use some water to train your jute twine. So that takes care of the bell part. Now we just need to put some greenery down here and put something around the bottom. Okay, the finishing touches. A little bit of greenery and some berries. And I basically have put like a bend on it for a hook so it can go around the stick. And then I just put a little glue there so that it will stay in place. And I just go around that same area. That way it'll hold that weight of it as well. And so just like that, putting that little bit of greenery and that berry all the way around that and just holding it there. And then I have made some bows and I put it right here. And this velvet ribbon is just awesome. It comes on this wooden spool. Absolutely gorgeous. It has that vintage red color to it. And it comes in this box real nice and affordable. So I'll be sure to put you a link down below. I have made the Rudolph tag, and I take and put it around this greenery. So I'm sure that I hold my tag in place, and I make sure that these strings are straight, and I just basically make sure that I loop it behind them, and I make sure that I also put that cording exactly where I'm wanting it to stay, because with this greenery and the thickness of it, it's gonna be bushy, so I try to like separate that greenery so that that cord is strung in between the greenery. Always take your card and put it straight back. And if you do that, when you pull this through, it'll be exactly where it is that you're wanting, and the tag, you won't have to fight with the tag. Will catch your cord. That's why you kind of want to get it in place before you pull it. And then, like I said, I just separate the greenery out of the cord, and then I can pull my cording down, and it'll be where I'm wanting it. And then I can cut off the tails if that is dangling far enough down where I'm wanting it. And the last thing is the bow, and a lot of times I put the glue on the back of the bow before I introduce it to my reindeer. A little bit of glue is all it needs, and that's actually more than what it needs. But it's on there, so I just make sure I put it right where I'm wanting it. So I'll show you a better picture of it, but you get the gist, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Just gorgeous. And then I put my brand tag on there as well. So if you'd rather purchase than to make, check out dandysoap.com/shop. I'll put the link down below. How to make a reindeer head, pick, or poke. He turned out absolutely gorgeous. They are all stunning. And most definitely, this is something you can make to sell. It'd be a beautiful gift and wonderful for you to sit about every single year. And it will last year after year as well. Any handmaids are always welcomed. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, will do. And make sure you share it with someone you really love. Until the next DIY, this is Elizabeth, and I'll be crafting y'all. Merry Christmas.